Okay, welcome to GDQ ICT Honors. Today is May 13th, I think. Is that right?
Yep.
Yes. Sorry, I got to see if I can find my watch here. Okay, May 13th. Welcome Joshua into our midst in spirit, if not in present. We have had one question so far this morning from Timmy. Timmy wanted to know, what do I do with the auto increment values in the ID? When I delete them and then add them again, let's say I've got 10 records, and so my IDs are up to 10, and then I delete those 10 records, and I add one in again, I expect it to have an ID of 1, because it's auto increment, but in fact it may start at 11. And I said, absolutely do not worry about it. Just ignore that. Those values are meant to be unique, and that's the only thing that's important about them. Do not depend on the order of them. Do not depend on the actual values or anything else in them. Just treat them as a unique number that you can uniquely identify that record. Other than that, don't worry about it. Okay? So that was the first question. Christopher just asked me a question about update. He said, when you use the SQL update function, what happens if the condition, the where clause, doesn't match any records? Well, if you will recall, or maybe we haven't talked about this, I'm not sure. When you do an update, you can update all of your records all at once. You can say update students, set name equals, or set f name equals Sam, and don't give it a where clause, so that means it's true for every record, and it will update every single record in the database to Sam. That's totally legitimate. You could say update f name, update students, f name equals, set f name equals Sam, where class year or graduation year equals 2017. And then maybe 4 or 5 of the students would be updated. So you can do 4 or 5 records out of the group. Or you can update 0 records if your where clause doesn't match anything. It will not insert in an update just because you don't have any records that match. Is that clear how that works? Okay, good. I want to talk briefly this afternoon about Ajax. It's probably morning for, actually, what time is it for Joshua? It's night? Okay, so tonight. I want to talk tonight, Joshua, about Ajax. And I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail. I will call your attention to what I'm looking at up here. There's a good article about it in W3 Schools, and as I go to each different page, you should, from the video, you can just pick up where I'm looking. There's lots of good tutorials about Ajax, so I didn't bother putting together my own. What is Ajax? Ajax stands for Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Ajax is a technique for creating fast and dynamic web pages. It allows web pages to be updated asynchronously by exchanging small amounts of data with the server behind the scenes. And you're saying, what on earth does that mean? Here's a classic example of it. Let's say I'll do my standard example first. I want to find out what 67 times 3 equals. And I click this button here. Watch what happens to my screen. It reloads, comes back, I scroll down a bit, and voila, there I have my answer. If I was doing this by Ajax, and I say 78 times 5, now watch what happens to the screen and everything else when I push this button. It goes out and comes back. I'm still viewing the same page. I have not reloaded the page. And yet I have sent away to the server, and I have gotten a response back from the server. This was not something that JavaScript calculated. This was something that PHP on the server calculated and sent the answer back, which was then put in this field. Could it have been done with JavaScript? Absolutely. But you saw the delay before it came back, and that was indicative of the fact that we were sending a request out to the server and then getting the results back. There is, where was it here? Yeah. Okay, there's a really cool setup here that explains how things work. You can see where this is, webstepbook.com, supplements, 2ED slides, whatever, you can see what it is up there. And I'm just going to go through the first few slides. I'm not going to go through them all. They do use a different kind of Ajax. They use a library called Prototype. You guys may have seen libraries for JavaScript called Prototype, or called jQuery, or called Moo, or there's a whole bunch of different libraries out there. They use one called Prototype. I personally prefer jQuery, but you can do it without any of those. You can do it with just plain vanilla JavaScript without any libraries at all. So let's go ahead very quickly and see what their description is here. The concept. This is synchronous web communication. So you as a user, you're viewing the page and you do something. You click a button or something in JavaScript triggers something, and notice what happens to what you're looking at here. It goes away. It stops. You're not looking at the page because it's gone over here to talk to the server, and we won't see anything again until the server comes back and views the page. This is your classic stuff. This is what all of the web development that you've done up until now does. You press a button, it goes away and comes back with a new page, right? Then you do it again, yada, yada, yada. All right? So you've got this pattern going. Click, wait, refresh. This is where Ajax comes in. It gives you a dynamic website that mimics the feel of a desktop app. So that's how something like Gmail or Google Docs or Google Maps, everything that comes to mind is Google. There's tons of other stuff out there that do it. What are some of the other ones? 30 Boxes, Bing, okay. Google search itself, Bing search itself, when it brings up those search suggestions, it's doing that by Ajax. You type the first couple of letters or the first couple of words and it gives you some suggested searches. Those are coming to you by Ajax. The server is delivering those, all right? So notice that Ajax is not a programming language. It's a way of using JavaScript. It downloads the data from a server in the background, and it allows you to dynamically update a page without making the user wait. It avoids this click, wait, refresh pattern, and then there you've got some examples.
Is it a different kind of, is it a different language?
No, it's using, okay, Ajax was asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML.
What is XML?
We're going to get to XML in a few minutes.
Storage, isn't it?
It's a way, HTML is a form of
Display.
XML. It's a way of putting data together in a file. Okay, but we'll talk about that. And in fact, you don't have to use XML within Ajax, but you don't change the name. For instance, JSON is becoming much more common for use within Ajax, but we don't change it from Ajax to Ajax when we do that. We still just call it Ajax, okay, even though we're no longer using XML. All right? So, moving on here, here's now what it looks like. You're viewing the page, you press your button, but now you have a solid line here. You're continuing to view your page while this goes off to Ajax, goes off to the server sends a response back, and your page gets uploaded in real time. Meanwhile, you have had no interruption to what you are looking at there on the page. Is that clear what the advantage is of Ajax? I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Not how.
Right, the how is something we need to get, but do you understand what it's doing? What the difference is between standard and Ajax interaction with the web server?
All Ajax does is refreshes a tiny part of the web page rather than...
Normally, okay? You can actually refresh the whole thing. You could say, from beginning to end, replace what I've got with what I just got from the server. But then you don't really have any advantage over just standard.
Except that you're always using
Except it's a little bit faster, I guess.
And then Ajax, or without Ajax, you just, like if you had this super long web page and you were doing something over here, you just scroll down all the way.
Right, right.
You could set a timer for it, so it's like constantly updating your inbox, like in Gmail.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me just give some examples based on what you guys are going. Coleman, you are doing like a Facebook or a Twitter lookalike kind of thing. And right now, whenever somebody puts in a comment there, you have to press refresh and reload the screen in order to see the new comment. If you had a JavaScript going out there every 3 seconds and looking to see if there was a new comment, you could automatically refresh and put it in there. Christopher, you're putting in your game out there, and a lot of times in games, you guys have seen this in Minecraft, where you can actually talk with somebody else. You can type in a chat form and it comes up on them. Well, you could write in something during the game and it could upload to the database. It could put that data in the database, and then the other person's game could look at that every 2 seconds and bring that back in, and they would say, oh, you have a message from Christopher popped up here, and you could be having this little chat going on the side. Tim, yours is the classic example where you're doing the parent-teacher thing, and to reload that entire page with 100 buttons or 200 buttons or something like that takes a long time, or at least it did when I put it. I was doing it in a very slow technology. Whereas if you just did it by clicking the button and Ajax goes out there and updates it, it's going to be almost instantaneous. And so you get a much faster response, and you don't have as much possibility that 2 people could sign up for the same slot at the same time. Aaron and Israel, I don't know what your projects are, so I can't give examples for you. But you see the examples of doing that. Tim?
So is Ajax something you can add on to a program script, or is it something you have to build into it as you're making it?
It requires a little bit of re-architecting in order to, it's not something you just add on at the end.
Okay.
But you can do it, you just change what JavaScript is doing. You change it so that the JavaScript is going out there and doing this and then updating this, rather than submitting and doing everything all at once. So you'll reuse different parts of it, but you have to do them in a different order. Okay? All right, so that's what Ajax does. Now, here's what it looks like. XML, HTTP request, long name, does it asynchronously. This is just JavaScript technology. They don't like it, and they like the prototype, so now they're going to go and they're going to give some examples of how this looks, but I want to show it to you in the plain vanilla here. So I'm going to go back over here to W3 Schools. I'm going to pull down here into the Ajax tutorial, and let's see what we got. All right, here's an example. Let Ajax change this text. I click on it, and now it says it's not a new programming language. It's a technique for creating fast and dynamic web pages. I go on to my next chapter. Okay, we've already done all this stuff. This is just a description of it again. I think you guys understand it. This is very standard material that we're working through, but you will find a lot of difference among browsers. You have to do a lot of work to make it work on all browsers. You have to say, well, try this. Oh, that didn't work? Okay, catch that error and try this. Oh, that didn't work? Okay, catch that error and try this. Now, it's just very standard stuff. You just copy and paste that try, catch, try, catch, try, catch. But you have to make sure you do it on every one, or else or else it doesn't work for you. All right, let's take a look. Hopefully this next page will give it what it is. Here's the example. You already saw it working. Let Ajax change this content. It does like this. Here it is explained. Here is what our HTML looks like. We have a div, okay? And the reason why we've got the div is simply so that we can very clearly identify, by means of this ID, what it is that we want to change. We're going to change the inner HTML of that div. Got it? So that's the only reason we've got the div there. We could have used a span instead. We could have used a table cell. We could have used whatever you wanted. But we have to have some way of uniquely identifying that to say we're changing the inner HTML to whatever this is. And then we have just a simple button with an on-click equals do this in JavaScript. Now let's look and see what the script does. The script is here just within a normal script, and let's go to the next chapter to see what it looks like. You're going to have something like this. If I've got this, then do this. That takes care of IE7, Firefox, Chrome, etc. Otherwise, do it this way. And I think that this is not quite complete enough. I'll show you in a minute in a TZAG tutorial, something that's a little bit more complete. And here's what the actual thing looks like. You're going to open the request. Okay, notice this, XML HTTP.open, and you say it's going to be a get. You can either have get or post, and then you give it your URL, and I forget what the true stands for. Oh, whether it's asynchronous or synchronous. It's almost always going to be asynchronous, because otherwise what's the point? Then you send it off. And, okay, you guys are very familiar with the difference between get and post. I don't need to talk about that, right? You understand what that is?
Yeah.
Get is when it's handed in on the command line. Post is when it's handed in that little bag that goes along with the thing. All right, the one is visible, the other is not. So here's the way they come in. Post request, yada, yada, yada. Okay. async equals true. All right, now here we come back, and when we get it back, all we have to do is say this XML HTTP dot response text. Okay, we're going to say that is the value that has been returned from our PHP server. So we sent off the request to the PHP server, and it handed it back to us in this variable called XML HTTP dot response text. Now, the XML HTTP, you name it, that. Okay, so you can call it foo, you can call it bar, you can call it XML HTTP. But this part over here, response text, is one of the attributes of that variable, and so you can't change that. So you can call it foo.responseText as long as you've set your things up appropriately. So here we go, then we just go through and we print it. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the point where they actually have a full thing.
If you click on try it yourself, guys, it shows all the code to the left.
Okay, let's see if that'll do it.
To the left.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So here's our function, load XML doc. It goes out there. If we've got this, then we say a new XML HTTP request. Otherwise, for other browsers, we do this. And then we say this same variable, which we establish here or here. Okay, do you see that? Did everybody see that? We've set up a variable of a certain type of object here and here. And then we set the onReady state change to a function. Are you glossing over or are you with me? Okay. This is an attribute of it. We're saying this is the function that you call whenever the state of this call changes. So it changes when I send it. At that point, it's now been sent. It wasn't sent, now it has been sent. When it comes back, it may come back with an error or it may come back with success. But in any case, it's going to come back and say, hey, something changed, hey, something changed, and every time it will call this function. All right? And what does that function do? In this case, it's just an anonymous function. I don't have a name for it, and it does this right here. I check and say, is my ready state 4? That means a successfully returned thing. And is my status 200? Once again, success. If it's 4 and 200, then everything's good. In that case, then set the inner HTML here of this ID, remember the ID that we had out there? Does that ring a bell?
Could be spam, you said.
Well, you can set it to whatever you want. Set the inner HTML to XML HTTP, which is the same variable as we set up here. All right? And the same one that we set for our function here. We're setting it to this using the response text side of things. And then, now we've set what function is, but we haven't actually run this function yet. Then we say open using get, sending the value to Ajax underscore info.txt, and then it's true, so it's asynchronous. Then we send it off. It goes out there, and Ajax JavaScript just says, I'm fine. I'm not going to do anything until I get that signal back from the server that he's got something for me. I've put a request out there, but now I just leave it. It's like I've sent a piece of mail, and I'm waiting for them to respond to my mail. Until the mail comes back, I'm not going to do anything. I just continue processing the page as normal. So you tell me to do something else, you tell me to click on a button, you tell me to change the order of a table. I just do it like normal until this comes back. When this function, when this state changes, then it calls this function, and I say, was it successfully done? Do I have this 4 here, and do I have this 200 here? If I do, then set the inner HTML to the response text. So I do this, and lo and behold, it comes back. And that was really, really quick response. Okay? See how that looks?
What happens if you change context again?
I think it just keeps the same. Yeah. All right? Because we don't have the example of the PHP back in there yet. Let's see if I can get the example of the PHP. Okay, using the callback function, you can see what they've got here. This is the same thing, what we just did. I'll get you to the PHP, and then you'll see what it is. I'm not interested in ASP.
This PHP example too.
Yeah. Okay, here's the Ajax server page. Okay, here we have two versions of the file, one written in ASP, the other in PHP. I don't use ASP. I want to learn it someday, but I haven't learned it yet. So here's the PHP code, which will be called on the server side in order to give the answer back to the JavaScript by PHP. And just so you see what we're doing, if I'm up here and I type in A, then it comes back and gives me suggestions of names that start with A. If I start P, then it gives me the name Petunia. Okay? See how that works? So that's our little code that we're doing here. And the PHP file just simply sets up a list of names first, and then it checks the request value. You're familiar with that. We're getting it in through get. And Q, the value of Q, is the query. So that's the A. I just typed in an A. So request brackets Q is going to give me a value of A at that point. Then, as long as Q is not blank, go through and search all of these for each A, check and see if it matches. If it does match, then add to it the comma, space, and then the name that's there. And then simply, watch this, echo $hint, if hint is blank, echo no suggestion, otherwise echo $hint. So basically all I'm doing is I'm echoing a value. I'm putting a value out to a quote-unquote page and then ending my program. And Ajax says, oh, you're done with making that page? Good. I'll suck that page in and I'll hand it off to JavaScript and tell them what the new state is for their program. So JavaScript picks that up, says, oh, okay, state 4 and 200, good. Let me put this value.
State 200 and 400.
You want to see what the other states are there? I'll explain that in just a second.
Are there really 200 states?
No, I think they they count it by hundreds. We can look and see what those values are. But once you establish the 4 and 200, you know everything is good, and that's what 98% of the time that's what comes back. And in that case, then you can put that value in the inner HTML. So let's see. Okay, here's a database example. I think you can imagine how the database example works.
Can you show us how it works?
You're just getting the data from the database and then echoing it out. Okay, so I select a customer, north-south, and boom, it pops it up there. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Now, how does it work?
And Ajax, yes.
Okay, the Ajax server page right here. Oh, bummer. They did it in ASP, so it's harder to read. Okay, but basically, where's our SQL?
It's the conduct of set con equals in SQL. They're using an old version of SQL.
Blech. Maybe they'll do one in PHP for us. No. Okay.
ASP. Is ASP better than PHP?
It's different because I'm more used to the other one. I prefer PHP, but tons and tons of websites are written in the other one in ASP. Okay. I think that's I didn't want to take your whole time. I want to give you as much time as I can. So I'm trying to see if there's anything else quickly I want to do here. Oh, I did want to show you what XML was. Here is one way to hand values back. Okay, this is JSON. So first, Stephen, last, Spielberg, address, 1234 unlisted drive. Okay, that's a way of getting it into your code and being able to say, this is one field, this is another field, this is another field. Then the three different parts of the data, you can do three different things with it, right? Rather than just having one, boom, piece of screen there, one piece of string. Instead, you can divide it up. Just like in a table, you don't have just one long thing, you've got it divided up into columns. Well, when you get it onto your page and your JavaScript's going to mess with it, chances are you want to have, okay, my first name is here, my last name is here, my age here, my graduating year here, the grade for the student, whatever it is, you want to treat them separately. And so here's a way of doing that. XML is another way of doing that, but I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to let you guys figure out JSON. JSON uses stringify to create it, and it uses parse, JSON.parse to bring it back out. Yeah. Anyway, I'll let you guys sort that out. Like I say, there's tons of really good tutorials out there on the web for how to do Ajax. I wanted to give you a quick introduction to what it does so that you're aware of it, and so that you're aware there's nothing magic, there's nothing hard about it. The only thing that's hard about Ajax is debugging it. All right? Because it gets this mysterious connection out there, and all of a sudden it stops doing something, and you're like, well, what's happening? I'm clicking it, and you think the problem is with your JavaScript, but really you forgot that you made a syntax error in your PHP over here. And so your PHP program isn't returning what's expected anymore. So you've got to be real careful and real deliberate about when you're debugging Ajax. Okay? That's it for now. Enjoy.